ADTX Addicts Immune Program initiated
Good
manufacturing
morning,
of drugs
traders.
using
It is 8:03 a.m. Chicago time on Friday.
in
Happy
preparation to
Friday,
utilize the
all.
first in human trial of
Um, this is episode number
Today's top
2341.
match news of the
Derivatives
participants
trading is
that
not
have been
suitable
buying
for all
ADTX.
investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. So, happy Friday, everybody. If I sound
The S&P
like
500
I
did just
am
turn positive there. Also coming from a EU
out of
data
it,
and
is
obviously starting
because
to
I
rise again
am.
since end of week.
It's just been a really long week. So let's take a look at. Oh, hang on. Let me mute the sounds from my computer. You're probably hearing a lot of news. The pre-market summary sheet this morning. We actually moved from mild risk off to now popping higher. We're seeing a pop across the board. Big push up. We're seeing it in options. We're seeing it in treasuries. We're seeing in equities. This looks um, this looks like a news event to me. We'll determine the SOC in a minute, but this this is certainly news based here. I'm seeing a lot of headlines on energy out of Europe, but haven't seen anything relating to maybe interest rates. This looks like an interest rate or central bank type move here, unless Putin has given up on Ukraine. I don't know. So the mild risk off is about right. It was more risk off, uh, and so this morning we're looking at bond yields having moved quite a bit overnight, 10 basis points moved higher. This puts a lot of pressure on um, on equities still. Remember, the market's driven by macro forces, and the yield curve, the treasuries are very, very important. You're seeing the effect of that on currencies and across the board. In this environment, a fundamental environment, the drivers are going to be monetary policy, fiscal policy, but really monetary policy, and commodity driven, uh, and that's what's pushing us around right now. So with the bond yields going higher, bonds dropping, which may have reversed now, just things are going to respond. The earnings yesterday, Snap came out, Whirlpool, the outlook's pretty gloomy. The earnings have been pretty weak on those. This morning, Great Britain got its retail sales number, was expected at negative 0.3, came in at negative 1.4. Overall, the UK is just doing really terribly economically right now due to political as well as other fiscal issues. And then what the market has to anticipate is next week is just a huge week in terms of earnings. We get Apple, Amazon, and all these big behemoths. And we also get the ECB, which is expected to hike again. So that's where that stands. And so this morning also we get Feds Williams speaking. Pay attention when a Fed speaker speaks. You just don't know what they're going to release. We get consumer confidence out of the Eurozone. We get the Baker Hughes rig count this afternoon at 1. Looking at the S&P was in a multi-distribution profile, is more balanced today. It's more of a boxy profile. We have a lower overall. The S&P's been lower. It's sold off on the reopen. We've got pretty decent volume, 386,000 contracts traded since the RTH closed yesterday, with 87% and reducing. 87% of the inventory is short this morning. So a heavy short presence this morning. So we're going to look for the market to rebalance on the open by pushing higher, being responsive higher into yesterday's range. The range overall in the overnight session has been less than what we've seen recently of 42 points. We've seen 70 to 75 points on a regular basis. The point of control in the overnight session is 36.52, well below the prior point of control, which was above 3,700. So the market, what this is saying is the market is accepting lower prices currently, and we are in the lower balance. Let's take a look at that this morning. So TPO chart, overall, yesterday we took out the prior high, took out the prior low. We ended up with a weak low. We finished pretty weak in the S&P yesterday. And this morning we are trading at 36.84 here, right above this lower distribution. Pretty bulky profile, pretty active price discovery throughout the range. We'll look at this is the market profile. We'll look at the volume profile, but the market profile is showing that we traded the range quite a bit yesterday, which makes for depending on the range, makes for some pretty important structural setups. Days like yesterday look like noise, but they actually generally have pretty decent setups in them. So we opened up, we tested below down to 41 down here, and then we're popping back up. We've moved up about 48 points at this point from that low. We were pushing lows. We clearly rejected the overnight session, clearly rejected higher prices, the attempt higher, and now we're pushing that high back to that key 36.90 level. So let's look at this on a volume profile basis. Look at what's going on here. We moved down into this lower distribution and we rejected it, and we're moving back to this 36.90, which is an all session point of control. We've had some pretty heavy volumes in the overnight session, so I'm including that in here. So we are moving back to balance. There was some resistance here on the way up. We breached that yesterday. You can see we breached it yesterday. We could not push back up. This area right here between 36.85 and 90 is really important. We are very, very likely to see a reaction or a response in this area. That stock zone, that area there, this area here is expected to see some response. So let's look at our active chart. There it is. We expect sellers to start coming in. You can see there's a lot of fight up here. Pretty strong move on the way up. But the more dots you see and the more that prints here on the tape, the more there is a higher time frame. The more there's a higher time frame that is stepping in. So that's what this chart is showing. This is a 1 tick by 8 point and figure chart. I don't like time-based charts because I don't care that another bar printed because of the passage of time. I don't really care about the passage of time. So I'm looking either at Renko charts, or which are based on rotations, or point and figure charts, which are also based on rotations. So when we look at the overnight session, we have a profile that's pretty blunt. It's a multi-distribution profile, and it's been extended up. This morning, we sold off immediately. We finished weak. Yesterday. We had a nice big zipper right here on the low. We want to reference this area. For the next session, we drop, come right back to prior settlement, find the divergent test of prior settlement, find sellers, and then we make an attempt higher, but that attempt is immediately refuted. You could see that the impulse up was met with an impulse down, and this thing was really moving, making its merry way lower into that lower distribution we've been talking about recently. So this was interrupted by this news event, which I'm really looking for here. There's some news here on the Russian defense minister speaking to the U.S. about stability and security in Ukraine. So I don't know if that's being seen as some sort of a détente attempt or what. But it could be Fed news. I saw the move happen across the board on my chart. So whatever that is, it doesn't matter. See that rotation? We just talked about it. Expected this 3690, 85 area, very key. And I just told you about 3 minutes ago, 4 minutes ago, that I'm expecting a reaction here. This is, for those of you, if you didn't watch the public event yesterday, please do. I link it in the live chat. I link it in the live chat a little bit above. I talk about this exact type of setup here where we're pushing into a stock zone where we expect a reaction to happen and gaining the ability to respond to that reaction, to that action by reacting without thought, by executing a trade. And here's an exact live setup of that. The overnight session really was weak. I mean, if you look at what the market has done in the overnight session, really it just was weak across the board. To me, before this news event here, whatever this is, before this took place, we're back at the mid. By the way, 65 is now important. So 85.90 to 65, we just hit those pretty good. Overall, if we had come in, my view on today was going to be my plan for today. My primary scenario is the same thing we saw the other day where the market perfectly tested up to settlement, couldn't find any interest and sold off. I'm looking for that today. I was looking for that today before this news event, that I want to see how the market responds higher, balances inventory, tests into the range, but the expectation is for it to fail as it tests into the range, expecting a strong short rotation down into 3630 and then to start moving towards last week's low, all the way down around 3600. So that was the key plan for today. We are at potential support right here, right now. This news kind of throws a wrench in things. Here's the detail view of what's going on. I'm going to merge these profiles right because they're overlapping. You can see that these are overlapping profiles, and that's why we've been talking balance over the last couple of days. Look at that profile. How balanced is that? It's just almost perfect. So we're going to consolidate these profiles together so we can see what we have above us. So now 3714 becomes key resistance above on a market profile basis, and then 3690 below, 3690 just below that, which is still above us. And overall, as we said last week, this thing is likely to test 3600 at some point. We are balancing in between 2 or 3 major balance zones. So you have the first balance zone from the 25th. You have the second balance zone from the 9th, okay? And then now this week, we've built a brand new balance zone up here. Balance leads to what? Balance leads to imbalance. So what we have here is a market that is compressing. A big, mark my words here, a big move is afoot. When the market is doing this, it is sucking in positions, and it is very likely to break from here. And based on the configuration that we have here, the move is likely to be very strong from here. There's a lot of fuel in this rocket. We don't really know which way it's going to go yet. We'll get clues on that. We might get a gap day. I wouldn't fade that gap if we do. But let's say we open up on Monday and we're gapping down. I would not be looking long at all. This is very likely to get a lot of the volume that occurred here feeding the gap. That means sellers, and for this thing to move very quickly down. That's the configuration we're in currently. This is what we have here right now. So what the market is accepting is, yesterday we had a higher high lower low. The market made a valiant attempt at reversing up. It looked really good, right? It looked like it was really going to make a reversal, start pushing through the 3750. 3750 is hugely important. It failed at 3750. I talk about this in yesterday's execution webinar. If you attended it, you'll remember the trade I narrated in that area. And what it did is it tested up and it found sellers, and it came and it finished below the prior session's low. This is very bearish behavior. This news is a distraction, but overall, I'm looking for this market this morning to test higher early. Pay attention this morning. This is likely to be quite a mover. So what are we looking for in terms of our scenarios? Scenarii. What are we looking for? Likely to open here at the full session VWAP, full session mid. I'm looking for an open auction. I'm looking for this thing to be responsive. I'm looking for it to fail, to continue higher. I'm looking for it to return to the open, and then I'll be stalking short. And the way I'm stalking short is I look to the left to see what structures are there that I can lean against. And then as it pushes up, I'm looking for an area to short it with a little bit of structure to lean against, and then getting risk off and then just relaxing and letting this thing do its thing, whether it pays or not. And then I'm looking for this thing for the S&P to retest this 3650 to the downside and start moving towards the 3600. Really, the key from last week is right down here, the double O. Okay, so that's what the first scenario is. I'm expecting us to move. I mean, it's clearly telling us that it was one time framing down. So this day here really broke what was an attempt to go higher, and it balanced. And then yesterday it tested above that, so it looked like it was done pulling back and it might base and go higher, and it ended up closing at the low on an outside day. This is very bearish unless news comes out to change that. Technically speaking, I'm looking for scenario one to play out with a high probability. Okay, again, past performance is not necessarily indicative, but that's how things are shaping up. The alternative, open auction, drops immediately, pushes down, finds a base around this 3630 from last week, and then pulls back up and then holds sideways so that we're stuck between that 30 and 50 into the close. So 30 down here, 50, which is a big level, these mid-century figures. And so we end up with a lower low and we just sit sideways. Market's exhausted, nothing new to price in. Does that make sense about the first scenario? So on the open today, no distractions. Watch the quality of the move up. That's what's important today. Watch the quality of the move up. If it's moving up and it seems like there's a lot of lifting and we're getting good price, we're getting things that look like this. Let's look at the order flow chart. If we start to move up and we get one of these babies right here, right, then it's getting good migration on price, on pretty good delta or pretty good lifting, then that's not what I would expect. I would expect it to grind its way up, and then see a big reversal like this, and then now we're stalking the pullback to get short, looking for it to drop. That's what I'm looking. That's a visual of what I'm looking for this morning. So you can see it's starting to kind of balance at the 3665, which I talked about just a minute ago. So 90 to 65 key range there. It's balancing in here, and we're about to open in this range, critical range. Pay attention on the open. Good luck today, and I will catch you tomorrow. By the way, those who voted yesterday, these were the results. Those of you who voted for the poll for charity, we ended up winning on 3. We got 3 hits out of 4. We missed the crude oil, but we got a hit on the ES-NQR2I, which are all put positions on the event contracts. So for a net of about, I don't know, $16 or $18 or something like that. And those were your votes. So we made some money for St. Jude yesterday based on the trading. Thanks for voting for those of you who voted. Cheers.